Now I'm going to say we're very happy to welcome the Reverend Robert Yarnell.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is good to be here. And I always say how wonderful to share silence with you all. Um, as I mention each time, I started life as a Quaker, and so shared silence is very meaningful to me. There's a lot for me to be grateful for in this month of Thanksgiving. I'm living in a new house in Wappingers Falls. My partner is right here, Joseph, and we're dog sitting. So there's a beautiful boxer nuzzled up against me as I give you my talk today. So much to be grateful for, and all of you included. Now, your topic this month, of course, is forgiveness. And I want to look today at your topic of the month and do a little word play. Now, as some of you know, I'm a lyricist and I love words. So I decided to look at the phrase forgive and forget, which generally you'll hear in places like this is misguided. And I agree. We can still remember an offense and keep ourselves safe, for example, without holding the charge of a resentment. After forgiving someone, we can still take actions to protect ourselves from further harm, especially if the person we feel wronged us hasn't changed their behavior. So forgive and forget isn't entirely the way it works, in my opinion. Now, if there is a charge in us, and we have to be honest about it, then we have not actually forgiven. How do you know if there's a charge? Well, how often do you think about this incident or person or transgression? How often do you bring it up? When you do you feel calm or riled up all over again? That little rush of self-righteous anger we get when we know we're right and they're wrong is a deceptively strong energy. It lifts us out of depression and into an animated state, but it's a zombie-like animated state in that it's powered by ego and not spirit, powered not by love or God energy, but really by self-interest and ego building. Now, let me be perfectly clear. I do this too. I resent, I hold grudges, all of it. I'm not above any of the things I'm talking about today. In fact, this talk is as much to me as from me, which is appropriate because that to and from dynamic is really my focus today. So often we talk about what's coming to us. In other words, what we're getting out of life. Now, here are some of the things we might want to get: a new car, an apology, a better career, a house, a partner, or a better or different or changed partner, control over someone or something. Or we may want to get even with someone. We live in a society that focuses on what we're getting, looking out for number one. Very rarely do we focus on what's coming from us. In other words, what we're giving, which is, of course, the point of the holiday coming up, Thanksgiving. And even on that day, if we're honest, there are years when we forget to go around the table and say one thing we're grateful for. And if we're not practicing giving thanks, then we're apt to take things for granted. Taking is kind of a forceful way of getting. Now, in metaphysics, we know that these energies balance out. We reap what we sow. We receive as we give. With all the focus on getting ahead, getting things, getting the right answer, getting rich or getting healthy, our lives are, in short, for getting. That's two words. At any time, we can ask ourselves, am I for getting or am I for giving? Now, we can give attention, give our time, give from our finances, give the benefit of the doubt, give someone a break, give relief, perhaps by canceling a debt. And debt is a big topic in religious and spiritual circles. Whether we're in debt or feel that others owe us, it's not healthy. We're out of balance. In ancient times, all debt was to be wiped out in the Jubilee every 7 years or at least every 50. Now, of course, we're not just talking about forgiving financial debt. Anytime we're upset with someone, we feel out of balance, that they owe us something, perhaps an apology or compensation of some sort. That's a kind of debt. But giving cancels out debt, whether real or imaginary. If we forgive someone, we wipe that feeling of debt away. And that feeling, remember, was in us. We are the ones who suffer from our grudges and tantrums, our resentments and irritability. As they say, holding a resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Luke chapter 7. We hear that Jesus was invited to a Jewish leader's home for dinner. His name was Simon. Now they all sat around the table when a woman of ill repute came in, widely known to be a prostitute. She knelt at Jesus's feet, weeping, washing his feet and anointing his head with expensive perfume. Now, Simon thought to himself, this man can't be a true prophet. If he were really a prophet, he would know what kind of sinful woman is touching him. And in a wonderful modern translation in Luke, verse 40, Jesus said, Simon, I have a word for you. Go ahead, teacher, I want to hear it. He answered. And Jesus said, it's a story about two men who were deeply in debt. One owed the bank $100,000 and the other only owed $10,000. When it was obvious that neither of them would be able to repay their debts, the kind banker graciously wrote off the debts and forgave them all that they owed. Tell me, Simon, which of the two debtors would be more thankful? Which one would love the banker most? Simon answered, I suppose it would be the one with the greater debt forgiven. You're right, Jesus agreed. Do you see this woman kneeling here? She is doing for me what you didn't bother to do. When I entered your home as your guest, you didn't think about offering me water to wash the dust off my feet, yet she came into your home and washed my feet with her many tears and then dried my feet with her hair. You didn't even welcome me into your home with the customary kiss of greeting. But from the moment I came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You didn't take the time to anoint my head with fragrant oil, but she anointed my head and feet with the finest perfume. She has been forgiven all of her many sins. This is why she has shown me such extravagant love. But those who assume they have very little to be forgiven will love me very little. So I think here a lot is going on, but one of them is that Jesus warns us against arrogance. In some translations, Simon is a Pharisee, and Jesus often criticized this group as being somewhat literal-minded and heartless. But here's a woman who was made to feel less than by her whole society, made to feel low, and yet she gave and gave. And we hear that her debt, her sins or errors, at least as she may have thought and others may have thought, all of that's been cleared away. While the wealthy man offers dinner, but nothing else. It's a bit rote. For such a wealthy man to give dinner was quite easy. This woman gave everything. Giving brings us back into balance, gets us out of the lack mentality, whether that be financial lack or a sense of lack of worth, or even purpose. As we see, it's not all about giving money, though Jesus was financed by some wealthy women, it should be noted. And giving where we're spiritually fed helps us align our human and spiritual lives. But it's also about giving as an overall attitude. We can ask ourselves in any moment, again, am I for getting or am I for giving? What is my focus? We can give a compliment rather than worry about getting praise. We can give attention rather than resent people ignoring us. Give a smile rather than trying to get someone else to smile. Give love rather than focus on the love we're getting or not getting. Give someone the benefit of the doubt rather than our suspicion. We can give someone a clean slate rather than get into a fight with them, and so on. Now we have to be honest with ourselves, scrupulously honest. Am I giving to get something back, perhaps respect or credit, to gain favor or praise, because then we're really just exchanging, not really giving. The same way when I give the store $1 and they give me a soda, no one says, "Wow, Robert, what a generous man you are to give that store your $1." No, that's just an exchange. Giving expects and needs nothing in return when it's the true kind of giving. The world seems to wait for everyone else to get their act together. But the golden rule tells us to give them the act first, not waiting for their kindness, but giving our light in the presence of darkness, to paraphrase Jesus, to let our light shine no matter what. Now, none of this is easy. Let's not pretend. Something like love our enemies, extremely difficult. I may have mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating today. Robert Thurman, the noted Buddhist scholar, points out an error of translation in the following quote from the Buddha. The normal translation is, hatred cannot overcome hatred, only love can do that. Thurman says, no. The literal and more accurate translation is, hatred cannot overcome hatred, only non-hatred can do that. You see, we don't have to go all the way to love in one fell swoop and pretend we're the most enlightened and giving person on the planet, perhaps in order to get spiritual bonus points. See how tricky we are? First, we can simply stop hating, stop that energy-sucking activity that depletes us and puts us in a kind of spiritual debt. Yes, loving our enemies will add to our spiritual bank account, if you will, but first, we might need to simply stop hating, stop putting ourselves into spiritual debt. That might be more organic. When we hate someone, whether it's someone we know or in the news, we feel they need to change for us to be happy. We want to get them to change or get rid of them, which I think is a very odd thing that we say, get rid of. But actually, it's an accurate phrase for how we think. After all, we feel we gain when someone or something disappears. We get rid of. Rather than waiting for them to change or disappear, we are advised to send love, or again, to at least stop our destructive behavior. Maybe we don't have to join in when the conversation turns to that person that everyone hates. Maybe we don't need to post any more angry tirades on social media, and we don't need to reply to a perceived taunt. After all, hate is too great a burden to bear, as both Martin Luther King and John Lewis used to say. In Christianity's most famous prayer, Jesus asks God to forgive us our debts as we have forgiven our debtors. And of course, some translations say, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Clearly, we're not just talking about the ordinary definition of debt and debtors. I think that Jesus is not just giving us advice on how to pray. He's also describing how things work. First, we are given our daily bread. We're always taken care of in the moment. And then next, we will be forgiven to the extent that we forgive. Now, perhaps you're thinking, I don't need to be forgiven. Well, forgive me for saying it, but we all do. Not because we are terrible sinners or there's some kind of original sin, but because when we focus on what we can get, as we're trained to do, hoping to gain, we often unconsciously harm others, even when we're just going along with the status quo. We see this in relationships when we unintentionally hurt the other, and we see it in the built-in inequities present in this world, which often keep some of us doing just fine. But then when someone speaks of bringing things into balance, we hear that they're trying to take something. In the 70s, when women were beginning to enter the workforce in great numbers, we heard They're going to take our jobs, an oft heard phrase. Gay people want to get special rights and will lose something if they're allowed in. They will deplete the institution of marriage. So there's fear there. Our human structures are not inherently generous of spirit or resources. We have no jubilee. We don't often celebrate humility or generosity of spirit. This attitude is built in over thousands of years. The same way error thinking still appears in our language. Think about it, sunrise. Or we use man as the generic for people, or phrases like rule of thumb that we don't know have frightening origins. In the same way, there are structures built into our civilization that hurt people, even unconsciously, because we don't yet inhabit the kingdom of heaven and offer it to everyone. So of course that's not built in. But rather than sitting around feeling guilty because of poverty, for example, and my part in keeping that system in place, we're invited to focus on giving and radical generosity. In other words, not just to give, but to be all about giving, to counter this tendency we've had since ancient times to focus on what we're getting and piling up, and instead to give. If they take your coat, give them your shirt as well, as Jesus said. Why take offense when you can give something of value instead? Now, we do this to the extent that we can be genuine with it. We're not martyrs or saints. It's about shifting our energy and feeling the love in us increase in more and more little moments. They add up. Now, at this point, I think it's important to point out some people feel that they're all given out. That's all I do. I give and I give and I give. It's possible that that giving is coming from a place of low self-worth. You're trying to kind of get a sense of worth or purpose. And you might need to stop first and give to yourself. That's called self-care. Now, that's an even exchange because, of course, you're giving to yourself and you're the one getting it as well. So there's no energy going out from you, but it recharges. And that may be an important first step. But I encourage everyone not to stop there, because giving is what really keeps the circulation in our lives going, giving outward. So in my life, I keep asking in various moments, am I for getting or for giving? And I encourage you to ask that this week and this month, or at least give it a try. Thank you.